Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Great work, all of you, by the way. Just an amazing, unique experience.
Mhm.
I kind of want to start, Addison, and just
Yeah,
kind of get a sense of where did it come from? What's the inspiration? And then we'll kind of dig into some of the specifics.
absolutely. I think all my ideas come from a beautiful thing called depression. So I was basically, sitting on the couch depressed, and I watched this movie called The Untamed, which is a wonderful movie about an alien who a tentacle monster in a shack that fucks people and makes them feel, heroin like euphoria. And I was like, I want that. I want that so bad. I want that now. And I was like, well, what would that feel like? What would that feel like? What would I do? Like to have that feeling and make it never go away. And so I kind of dreamt up this world, and I had been learning Japanese for 5 years, or I have been. And so I've been really obsessed with like the pink film era, 60s and 70s Japanese cinema, of like the exploitation film of, female revenge. And so I kind of was able to, with my like new discovery of having obsessive compulsive disorder, like create this world. I'd also been going through like a pretty devastating friendship breakup, and I wanted to kind of rate the movie from the perspective as if it was my fault, because you go through these like devastating things, and you're like, what happened? How did this get involved? Like, how did we get here? And they sometimes hurt more than actual relationships. And so I created this world, put all of my kind of emotional baggage into Craig's character, and honestly into Joey's character, and then uh, created this wacky, weird Brian of, we all know that guy, but also he's kind of like a metaphor for addiction, that kind of
Yeah, I mean, I
feel.
think what is so impressive, and you just captured it, is that, and I want to hear all of you guys kind of chime in a
Yeah,
second. This idea that you took something very personal and human and grounded
yeah,
and relatable, and you added a high concept element that serves a little bit as metaphor,
yeah.
like addiction or escape. The movie opens, Olivia. I just want to talk about that opening, and ask you, that is a lot of weight to carry. It's like, you and Addison, but like, let's start with Olivia, just talk about the work involved. How many takes did you, and like, I was like watching it, and at a certain point I was like, I can't believe they did this so well, that it's so compelling. And yet if you told me you were going to start a movie that way, I'd be like, that's going to be rough, like, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, when I got the script and read it, that was one of my first thoughts, was like, how are we going to pull this off? And I got the movie like a month before we started shooting, and I was on another film, so I only had a few days between projects to start memorizing for this. And I'm dyslexic, so it took me a really long time. It's one of the hardest things in the world for me to memorize things. So I was absolutely terrified, and we ended up shooting that day one. That was the first thing we shot.
And that was her first take.
That was my
What?
first take, the one that's in the movie. So that was the first time I played Joey. It was the first time I ever acted for Addison. It's the first time the crew's ever seen me act. And I was like, it was very much like, I could fuck this up so easily. Like, it was terrifying. One of the most terrifying things I've ever done. But I just got lost in it. And I think we did 5 takes. I keep forgetting the number. But we
We
ended
did
up
4 or 5.
taking.
We one got interrupted by, there are these things called planes that ruin things that are 8 minutes long.
Imagine being on like minute, and this happened like 7.5 minutes in, and then a plane flies over. And like, I'm telling you, I was covered in sweat, full body sweat for the whole hour and a half we filmed that scene. But it was a really good way of me getting into the character and figuring out Joey. And Addison really trusted me, and we didn't even really talk about it. We didn't talk about the monologue. He was just like, do it. And I was like, okay, I'll do what I have in mind. And um luckily,
Yeah,
hopefully not too
I
boring.
guess I guess the thing that's so impressive, I mean, all of it is, but, and I want to sort of go to Lou, Jordan, and Marlene about this too, but everybody seems so you all seem to really inhabit these characters, even when they are doing and saying things that are outlandish or absurd or ridiculous. And what grounded for each of you, and maybe it comes back to Addison saying like this is about depression or this is about addiction, but like what grounded you each in the performance, because it never feels silly. I mean, it's funny, but it never feels absurd. It never feels ridiculous. Like it feels honest. Lou, you want to go first?
I think that Addison from the beginning told us, I mean, he was in whatever way, he was our anchor saying like, you know, I don't want this to be overdone. I don't want this to be, I don't want you to not believe what you're doing. I don't want you to be an actual cartoon. But those things were still part of what influenced the characters. So for me, mine was kind of like a Gene Wilder idea, just this
Ah,
truly sincere person who just wants to open up people's world, and show them this new magical land where he can fix everybody. So that's where I held on to that.
that's such a good reference, and that comes with such menace too. You
Yeah,
guys,
it
great pull
does.
on that.
It is.
Yeah,
He's a little sinister. Even he's a little sinister in
yeah,
Wonka.
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how we did it, is just make sure to stay real. Just make sure to be honest with the whole thing.
Yeah, Jordan, you certainly have at times a character who has like these tropes, like he's spoiled, or like some of his issues, or some of the things that come out. But how did you ground it and make it funny without it being? I mean, you guys really walked the tightrope, all of you, on that.
I will say that it did feel like walking a high line. Like it really, it felt tenuous at times, but we also trusted Addison, and he did say from the get, this is a personal story, despite these outlandish accessories. It is
Yeah.
ultimately a personal story. So the trap would have been to play Craig like an accessory to Joey's journey, and a kind of, I don't know, two-dimensional punchline. But at the end of the day, it was the Joey Craig dynamic. It was that relationship that was my real access point. And I really connected with Liv right from the bat. I just fell in love with her, and I thought she was really cool and really funny. And Craig felt exactly the same way. And that's why they're ultimately so codependent. But I think it never particularly interests me when a character just is who they are and they stay the same throughout the course of the entire film. I was interested in the fact that Craig had a real arc. He has a beginning, a middle, and an end. He's not the same person at the end of the film that he is when we start. And that was interesting to me. And the only way you earn that is if you play it like a real person. And I have met a Craig or two. Like, they're not me. They are far messier than I am, but they do exist. And I think just keeping in mind that, like Lou said, we're playing humans, and this is ultimately a real personal story at the center of this very strange universe.
Yeah, Marlene, I'm kind of curious also your answer, just kind of trying to ground it and stay within a world we can recognize, but just dealing with high concept elements. I don't know if you have anything else to
I
add.
just think that the best comedy comes out of really grounded things. I think that's life. It's tragically funny. And if you just, in general, I tend to do things like that. I also, Addison has given me my career has been playing moms on TV, and Addison has given me two very delicious mothers to play. And just to be able to play with what I know and yet be, fun. Fun was the thing, and outlandish and theatrical in my head from the time that I read the script. And he sent it to me, and he didn't say, "Hey, I want you to do anything." And I read it, and I couldn't get it out. He was like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "Only you can come up with something like this." And I say that because I know you now. And then I couldn't get it out of my head. And I kept saying, "This stupid movie that you wrote is driving me absolutely insane." And he's like, "You want to play Laura?" And I was like, "I still love you right now." And so I think Addison, everything that he does is, even in Hypochondriac, which is to me scarier than this, it had a tragically funny thing to it all, which is, I think, comes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things as an audience member that's so exciting about a movie like this is it's personal, but it's original, and we get so little of that, for a variety of reasons that are beyond anyone's control. But is that for all of you? And maybe we'll start with Addison a little bit on the challenge of just getting something like that done.
Yeah.
Because it's massive.
Yeah.
But just how like delicious it is to get to bite into, hey, this is new stuff. This is like fresh. This is an original idea. This is a creative spark, you know?
It's funny because like everybody was telling me the movie was fucking strange, and I just was in my head going, I don't know if it's that weird. I think it's just kind of normal. And so maybe that's just a testament to like who I am as a person. Oops. But you know, then you like go through the script, and you know, we're having our script through, and it's just like, okay, and then they have tentacle sex, and then a tentacle gets shoved in Craig's mouth, and then a head gets cut off, and then we chop off an arm, and then okay, it's fucking weird. Oops. I think when because it's I think it's been dubbed Funder the Skin, which is like I think the best way to describe this movie. And when I was you know, I think ultimately too, it's like I had to find the right people to get involved with this because I found the freaks and the weirdos, who's the four looking at you right now, which I fucking love. But like, you know, I knew I wanted to, and I was trying, you know, I wrote a movie that I was trying to keep the budget down. And funnily enough, that coincided with like my love of Japanese cinema because they shoot a lot of stuff on sets and make it practical and make it very theatrical. Kind of like going through, there's a movie called Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters, which tells you,
yeah, no, that's a great.
yeah, so it's like that is like one of my main inspirations for how we did all the Alien world, like all the short stories in there that take place on these theatrical sets that are kind of larger than life. I was like, let's take that, change the aspect ratio, and make it super practical and have this giant homage to the Japanese cinema of the era. So we could convince crew to maybe work for a little lower than they deserve because we're on stage for 2 weeks, and that's very, very, and also like getting to do all of our like kind of artistic flourishes. We don't have like $50 million to do visual effects, but let's spend like the appropriate amount of money into visual effects. And so with all these things of like being very scrappy with how we want to do the design, but also make it specific in its homages, we were able, I think, to create this world that was not necessarily the breaking the bank account, and also getting to have a fun time, and then getting Lou and Jordan and Marlene and Olivia on board, because it was a very difficult movie to cast because I think a lot of people didn't understand the movie, which is fine. But like, but when you meet with, even Lou like met with me for 3 hours, he's like, I don't get it, explain it to me. I've read it 3 times.
Lou, I want to. I love that, and I love everything you said just now is awesome. I think there are freaks and weirdos out there in the world who are gonna love this. Like that's who it's for sure. Yeah. There's tons of us, and I hope everyone like that finds it. But when you're casting and you're trying to get together a cast, and you got a great one, and the collaboration's awesome. But Lou, from your perspective, that like I don't get this, and like what opened the door for you into like the Gene Wilder thing and other things? Like how did you get there?
I had read it 3 times in the 3 days that I had to really make decisions, and each time I got a little bit closer and a little bit closer and a little bit closer to like how this sci-fi world worked. But I mean, when I talk to Addison, even he'll tell you like I wasn't asking questions about like acting or character or anything like that. I was just kind of asking, how does this world work? And do you know? I just wanted to make sure that he didn't, you know, when you get a script and it's this weird, it could just be somebody going like, I just wanted to do something funny. I just wanted it to be funny. And then you're like, well, okay, but there's no depth there. So I just wanted to make sure that Addison knew where this had come from and that it was coming from somewhere real. And when he talked about his toxic relationship that he had been in, and that's how this all got informed, and then explained to me how his world worked in perfect detail, I was like, okay, so you know this thing. You are a true director, writer. You know exactly what you want from this. You have your vision. I may not see it yet, but I can see my part. So let's try to figure that out. Yeah, that's how it works.
Olivia, when you got the script and read it and had your kind of initial reactions, like what were your initial reactions? And then like what made you feel comfortable enough to kind of take the risk on doing this and like doing all the things that happen in it and being as vulnerable literally from the first shot on?
I mean, like I said, I got the script pretty late into the casting process, and my friend David Lawson, who's the EP on the movie, called me and he's like, "Hey, you're into weird shit. Are you down to do this movie with alien sex? Will you read it really quick?" And I was like, "Okay." And I read it, and literally, like, I was like, "Yeah, I absolutely love this. This is so up my alley, and nobody's making anything like this." And I met with Addison 2 hours after I got the script, and we didn't even talk about the movie for like the first hour we met up. We just talked about the thing that really hooked me to the movie is I've never gotten to play a character that felt so much like myself. Like, I was diagnosed with OCD and anxiety as a child, and so it's something that I've struggled with and overcome, and had, it's just a part of who I am as a person. So getting to play a character that I felt like had, it was me, like Joey really felt like me, no matter where it went. And every theme in the movie was like the addiction and all that. Like, no matter, whenever I had a trouble on set, like, what do I do with this? There was something that I could personally relate to, which was really helpful. You don't always get that in a character. And Addison does such a beautiful job of weaving the fantastical with very grounded, real human experiences. And I mean, it was a no-brainer for me. I had questions about the monologue and the tentacle sex, but beyond that, um,
The two big, the two big ones. How many people in this chat were diagnosed with OCD and addiction issues? Because I was too. So I'm starting to wonder if this is like a support group or something. Are we doing an interview for a movie or? I'm curious to hear more about the way, not just for personal reasons, but the way psychological issues played in for all of you into the heart of making this movie. Because I don't think I think a lot of people would watch it and enjoy it. I don't know that they'd necessarily think that it's coming from such a deep place and such a pained, like true life experience. But I do think that's why it works so well. And I think that's a credit to all of you. So does anyone want to just jump in with that? I know that's kind of a big, deeper question. Didn't expect to go there on this. But
I'll just do it because I'll just jump in real quick. I think that's what Addison does. That is the beauty of his work, because Hypochondriac was the same way. And this is the same way. And even though his work scares me a little bit, and I think that that's what attracts me to it. I'm like, oh God, this is giving me stomach pains. I've got to do it because it's connecting at a deeper level. And that was it. Everyone else. That's all I'm saying.
No, for sure. I mean, it creates horror, but comedy, but anxiety, but like all these things. Like,
and it triggers any. If you've ever had it, you're like, oh, I don't know.
For
This is gonna
sure, for
frighten
sure.
me. Yeah.
The money problems, like Jordan, like right off the bat, when his inability to actually address the problem for the two of them in the early, they're like, we addressed it, great, let's celebrate. No, we didn't. Like, it's so human that even when he reveals that he watched the tentacle sex tape, it's like, it feels like, yeah, I mean, that's the least of their problems, right?
Well, I think that's the thing is, despite the fact that the film is anchored by Addison's experience with mental health and anxiety and OCD, I don't necessarily think you even have to have anxiety or OCD to relate to characters' compulsions, to relate to people who are avoidant of things they don't want to do or deal with. None of that. It's not like you have to sort of be formally diagnosed with some sort of with a mental health obstacle in order to relate to these very human things. I think the idea is that when they make you unable to live a productive life, or they are really interfering with your ability to live life to the fullest, well, then that's when obviously it crosses that threshold and it becomes maybe a bigger problem. But I think all of us can relate to this idea of being avoidant, being anxious, failure to launch, not wanting to take responsibility for your life, being in toxic friendships or relationships for too long. I think that's also kind of the cool thing about approaching this stuff. And part of what makes Addison's voice so cool is the universality to it.
Yeah, I mean, last question, but Addison, I'm really curious. You pulled this off. It's incredible and it's premiering and this is exciting. Do you feel like you left anything on the table that you didn't? I mean, you talked about constraints, but necessity is the mother of invention to a certain degree, it sounds like.
Yeah.
What were there things you were like, I wanted to, or next time, or like, or do you feel like, no, it's what I envisioned, it like executed?
Yeah, you know, there are certain things that I think do you have quote unquote regrets? I think are the wrong word, but like, do you wish you got more? Like, always, do I wish I got more coverage? Sure. Do I wish I got establishing shots? Sure. Do I wish I got more inserts? Sure. These are so basic, but like sometimes you're in the, and I'm really good at sounding really confident that you don't need something that we do. So that was like maybe like one thing that I'm like a little about. But I'm not a filmmaker that strives for perfection. I'm a filmmaker that strives for getting it done. So it's like it doesn't really matter if we didn't get something, because ultimately, and like, you know, there were times where like, oh, let's do a reshoot, or maybe we do something like this, and I'm like, why don't we just work with the footage with what we have? Because I just want to get something finished, and then I want to move on and work on something else, because I think that, you know, perfection is kind of like the thing that like allows you, or like doesn't allow you to finish something. And so there's stuff I will definitely like bring on into the next project, and hopefully I'll get like real money to not just have 20 days to shoot something, which 20 days is still great, but like I would love
Wow,
to have
this was you shot
35.
this was shot in 20 days.
Yeah.
Well, you guys did an incredible job. I think the set must have been a lot of fun, or just a very positive space. Am I right? It just feels like the whole movie, everybody seems like they're comfortable in what they're doing, and you can really, like, you can always feel that. So congratulations to all of you. I can't wait for this to be out in the world. And thanks for taking the time.
Thank
Oh yeah.
you.
Hey.
Thanks so much.
Much, man. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.